Welcome to Brandon Hall Group's HCMx Radio, the only podcast in the HCM arena that weaves current market research, HR technology, and industry leaders into each episode. Our HCMx Radio host is our Chief Operating Officer and Principal HCM Analyst, Rachel Cooke.
Hi, I'm Rachel Cooke. I'm our COO and host of our HCMx Radio podcast at Brandon Hall Group. I'm excited to have with me today our research team from Brandon Hall Group. We are going to be talking about our certification program for the learning strategist, and we're going to talk about the benefits, the design of the program, why you should participate if you're not already taking the certification. It's a great opportunity, and it's something that we put together in response to what we were hearing from our clients, the industry. Our team, our company has over decades of data, research, insights, expertise to help the learning professional and within human capital management to do their jobs better, be more agile, adaptable to what's happening, especially now in our current situation. And so we're really excited to share with you just a little preview of what, if you are not already familiar with our certification program, of what it is and why you should be part of it, and why it what it offers you as a learning professional. Mike, I know that it's something we talked about for quite some time, and here we are. What are some of the drivers and reasons about why we developed this program?
Well, thank you. Great question. I think currently in the world today of how we operate, the learning professionals of large organizations are typically being asked to really impact business outcomes rather than just content more than ever before. Learning executives are just now beginning to get a seat at the table, but if they can't prove that they can relate to their business partners' objectives, they're not going to be able to keep it. At the same time, there's a lot of business executives moving into learning roles, but they may not have that traditional background of learning, is what we're finding. So since many learning professionals have not necessarily worked on the business side, they often struggle to understand how learning can impact business performance. We also know that professionals need to keep developing themselves, and learning and talent professionals spend time developing others, but notoriously, we don't always work to develop ourselves or themselves. And when they do, it's often how to get a particular task complete and not necessarily focused on strategy, which is really, really important. And this leads to a lot of issues and complexities in our industry, right? So certifications in the marketplace today are not actually educating learning and talent professionals. They're just not. And what's worse is with the certifications out there, they're not even testing to know how to put the skills into action. Usually just like a one-step multiple choice type test, and that's just not working. And then finally, there's also the fact that many certifications require years of experience even before they take the certification. I think we're really missing out on an opportunity. We're preventing taking advantage of high-performing individuals that are usually working across functions in the business. This is, again, something that we teach, but we don't always practice.
Very true. And what are some of the implications you find that's happening right now, and how can our certification program be impactful?
Yeah, I mean, right now we have people with professional certifications, and quite frankly, they still can't effectively work with business stakeholders, and they lack the strategy to see the big picture. Learning professionals are busy working on making one type of learning asset that they don't even know how it's used or if it's effective, even the ones that have gone through trainings and have credentials behind their name. And that's why we decided to step in to create the only learning certification that focuses on the learning journey, where the exam taker feels like they've acquired new competencies. There's 24 competencies with this program, as well as skills that can be applied in their organization, because we're backed by evidence-based insights, not theory, all based on our research, our work with thousands of clients, really the first program out there.
And what I found was so eye-opening is when we were sharing our approach and we were walking through the different phases of the program, what we were hearing from our clients, from iconic companies and organizations, global organizations, and what they were saying, and it was resonating, how it can really be helpful, and how, you know, taking some of their traditional programs that may cost, you know, one executive thousands and thousands of dollars to do, this is something that can offer a larger population in their organization and really provide them a learning journey. Claude or Dave, can you tell us a little bit more? Mike mentioned the competencies. What are the professional competencies in the program?
Yes, thanks, Rachel. Yeah, there are professional competencies and then organizational competencies. And the professional competencies we really want to focus, as Mike alluded to, is, you know, beyond just learning, but the strategic things that learning professionals need to really have impact in the organization and impact on the business. So the professional competencies include things like design thinking, data science, ideation, consulting, strategic planning and execution, coaching and mentoring, both as a learning modality, but also the ability to coach and mentor your team, leadership and change advocacy, business acumen, digital dexterity, learning agility, inclusiveness, which is becoming even more important than ever, and collaboration, which is a real strength that learning strategists need across the enterprise.
And our team spent a considerable amount of time drilling down and looking at these competencies, vetting them, asking feedback. So we feel that we have really honed in on those competencies that are truly going to make the learning professional strategic. And why do you find that these are so important to develop? Dave, can you expand a little bit on there?
Well, sure. I mean, we were trying to find a good mix of competencies because, you know, we've seen that a lot of learning professionals, they have a certain stable of skills available to them, but the businesses are coming back saying that certain things are missing and they might not be things that they've picked up in their previous education or development. So we wanted to provide a pretty wide mix. Some were focused, you know, very specifically on learning strategy, and others that will move these candidates above and beyond their traditional roles and really get them thinking and push them into areas that are essential to establishing learning as a business driver rather than just sort of an order-taking cost center function. And, you know, as Mike has mentioned and Claude was just mentioning, as going through the list of competencies, you know, we find time and time again that organizations need these kind of learning professionals. They need to have the competencies that are aligned with impactful learning, and that includes, you know, leading and influencing, as well as inclusion and collaboration. So what we're seeing here is sort of a blending from our perspective of taking what we know are the best competencies for leadership and blending those in with the learning competencies that we understand and trying to create this new level of learning professional that is much more strategic than has been in the past.
And we've seen too how leadership and change advocacy is so critical to leading a learning organization or being a leader in an organization. What, you know, in today's environment, what are the attributes for a good leader, especially a learning leader?
I think in terms of leadership and change advocacy, it's really important to be able to operate in a disruptive environment and be a leader and a strategy leader in a, you know, constantly changing atmosphere that we're all working in now. The leader needs to understand the barriers to change and also understand that change is not absorbed by everyone in the same way. There's different stakeholder groups that a learning leader really needs to have understanding of. There may be cultural issues that drive objections to the direction of learning, or it could be a change in working conditions that creates resentment or concern. It could be a whole host of things, and it's important that learning leaders really understand how to operate in that kind of environment. And that includes, you know, it's so important to listen to stakeholders and consider that the learning strategy or the learning program that is going on at the moment or that is being developed might need to address more than skills and competencies, and in order to have the kind of impact on the learner and on the organization that it needs. And learning professionals, I think, need to do a better job, and we build that into the competency of really listening, actively listening and having empathy to their own team members as well as the people that they're developing learning for, and understand how to motivate and inspire to deal with and succeed in developing learning in a changing and challenging environment.
And we see companies that have done this well in spite of our current situation and pandemic or coronavirus that has impacted the whole world. And we've seen how companies that have had progressive and that were more mature with their technologies and that had more agile approaches to learning and to leadership they were positioned better during this time, and they were able to support, and in some cases they didn't really stop much of their learning opportunities or much of their and again, certain industries are far advantaged than others, but I do think there's a lot of best practices. And what's exciting is that our certification program will help you with providing real case scenarios and having you think through those scenarios and case studies and then applying them in your organization. Cliff, can you talk, yes, Cliff, can you talk a little bit about the organizational side of, we talked about the professional side and the individual. What are the competencies for the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned the case studies because that's another thing that we have as a unique strength is through our awards program, we are able to look at what companies are doing well and not just focusing on the shortcomings, but really seeing what are the competencies that really drive organizational success. And we see things like organizational performance, workforce performance, talent structure modeling, organizational design effectiveness, which is my background, learning and performance convergence, change management, something that Michael and I consult on all the time, performance consulting, technology leadership, outcome-based learning construction, learner engagement, neuroscience application, and of course, what's nearest and dearest to my heart, data integrity and advanced analytics. So I think all of those really, as you're listening to those, I think you're probably already hearing that this is a slightly more advanced program than you're going to see anywhere else.
Absolutely. And Michael, in the development and identifying those competencies, why did our team choose these competencies? Michael, can you unmute yourself?
Sorry about that, a little challenge in getting unmuted. So we leverage heavily our research related to competency development and our experience in working with so many organizations and helping them to further develop their competency strategies. And we really saw that there was a need to balance between developing the professional and creating depth and breadth of competencies that the organization requires. So there's what the individual professional needs to develop, but how does that relate to what the organization needs? And these competencies mirror the professional aspects of that. They're complementary, and therefore they create kind of a simultaneous development. The person, instead of focusing on individual competencies, are developing organizational capability at the same time they're developing individual capabilities. And then we also knew too that we had to blend the core elements of being a good learning strategist as it relates to the learning itself, but also to make sure that we properly position the learning professional to interact with folks from the business, and what are those business-focused competencies they need to know.
Fascinating, and it's an exercise companies go through all the time, identifying those competencies that are needed for the professional, the individual contributor, the leader, the organization. So, it's something that we looked at carefully, I know, and we vetted this against leaders in the industry and global organizations, of all different industries, to make sure that we've identified the right competencies to help the learning professional and to advance the learning professional to be more strategic, whether they are in an existing role or shifting from the business, moving into a learning role, or have been in the learning industry for a while, but they need to fine tune and to look at what is the new workplace, what is the new era, what is that looking like, and especially now, again, with things changing so fast. That's nothing new. We've seen technology disrupt over the years. It's going to continue to disrupt and change right before our eyes from day to day. Cliff, I want to go back to you. You mentioned data and the integrity of data and the advanced analytics. What, if there's anything that you see that we should be aware of, that people should be looking out for, because it continues to impact our personal and our day-to-day environments. What can our program help the learning professional do?
Yeah, and I just want to tie that into what you just said, Rachel, about how things get disrupted. And the only way you can really adapt to change is if you have that data. So I think, HR as a whole has to and must become a more data-driven, evidence-based type of department and organization, because the rest of your entire business relies completely on data and analytics to make those important decisions, especially in a sort of fluctuating situation, as does happen. Right, this is not a just standalone thing going on, and we, as an HR professional, and as my background too, it's a people-oriented organization, but that almost means you have to be more into data analysis to better make decisions. Right, you don't want to just go with your gut, how you're feeling. Those are important skills as well, but particularly for the learning professional, data analytics gives you a sort of a window, right, into the truth of whether learning is making impact on changing behaviors, on thinking and acting, and learning new skills and competencies. And I think that, of all of the skills that are there, data and analytics really gives you an opportunity to predict your talent needs, right, and for creating a framework for what learning needs to look like, in order to meet those talent needs, how to tie that into those business outcomes that, are the bedrock of what we're doing here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cliff. I'm going to circle back around our virtual day together. We can't all be in person. Hopefully that changes sometimes in the near future, but I'm going to circle back with you, Dave. If you had a couple of things to leave our listeners, our viewers today with, about just kind of the experience that we've had putting our certification program, and what do we hope that folks get out of this?
Sure. I mean, I think, and you've touched on it, and it's hard to avoid. And obviously, the 2020 has shown us that really what the extent of change really is. We've talked about the change of business and how things move so quickly. We've been talking about that for years. And I think what the challenge is that most professionals have a very certain framework in their mind when they think about change. They only think so far of how different can things get, how bad could they get. And 2020 has sort of expanded that greatly for everyone. We've really understood that change can be much bigger, much more abrupt than we ever thought. And what we want to do is provide people with the tools, especially learning professionals, the tools to put them at the strategic forefront of those changes, as opposed to being dragged along as these transformations go on. Learning has to be at the forefront, because if learning isn't leading these changes, how then can they turn and make sure that the workforce has the skills and the understanding and the behaviors they need to adapt to these changes? So it's a whole new mindset for learning. Rather than sitting back and reacting, it's being able to preemptively mitigate things that occur during change to this, as well as being able to adapt and react more quickly than they have in the past. And that's really what we want to get out of this.
Absolutely. And I think that's what's so unique about our approach is that it is about the learning journey. It is about applying the best practices and also evolving those practices, being able to adapt to the future. Thank you, Dave. Claude, what's your food for thought here?
Claude, I believe you might be.
Sorry. My feeling is that leaders or learning leaders need to kind of come out of the shadows and lead the way. And as Dave said, it goes so far beyond learning. And I think that our approach really opens learning professionals up to a broader world, a broader way of thinking about themselves in the context of the organization, and gives them the skills to really play a larger role and have the true impact that learning needs to have on the organization. I think that this is learning's time. This is the time to shine, and I think we provide the skills and competencies and provide the journey and the way to apply those new skills and competencies in ways that can really help them as individuals and drive real change and impact on the organization.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Claude. And Cliff, I know you had some really good advice around data and analytics in how this impacts our future. Is there anything else that you want to talk about the experience that you've had yourself? And I think everything's a journey, right? Every time I look at our awards applications, I attend our conferences, I participate in a webinar, whether I'm presenting or not. It's a learning experience for all of us. What are your thoughts as far as just kind of the creation of this experience?
Yeah, my background academically is in organizational development. I've also been certified in HR type practice before, and have worked as a head of HR. And now when I do these one-on-one engagements that Michael and I will do with very large corporations, you start to really see the difference between sometimes what has been taught and what you actually need to impact change, which is something Michael is a big believer in. I don't mean to speak for you, Michael, but actually driving business outcomes. And I think that has really been the seed that began to grow into the certification program that we have now. Is what does it really look like when you're actually in these organizations and really doing the work and really making an impact? And I'm very glad to have been part of it. And I know it'll be a big help for the people out there, because Michael and I have done enough to know there's a lot of work to be done.
Yes, there's always a lot of work to be done. So hopefully this will help our learning leaders and learning professionals be able to simplify some of the things, but also create meaningful and impactful solutions time and time again. So Michael, I'm going to circle back to you, the leader of change, from what I understand from Cliff, and our and I know that besides the stuff that you and Cliff are doing, our team as well has been hard at work with our clients, and we cover a lot of different facets of human capital management. So I think what truly, and I don't want to take the words from your mouth, but it's about learning. Learning is the center, but it integrates through all facets of the organization. So tell us here, our learning leader, what advice, what can you share about the experience, and why? If you are not doing this program, if you're not participating, why should you?
Well, it's a great question, Rachel, and I think it comes down to the fact that there's a big human element in making learning work right. And we all have to feel like we're change advocates and leaders at any level of the organization. And we've learned a lot through the years in empowering organizations to achieve breakthrough performance. And this program has allowed us to be able to offer that to the individual, to say that I don't have to have the obvious title or the obvious presence in the organization to really be a learning strategist. I can be a leader from any place at any time, anywhere in the organization, and have an immediate impact and have the confidence and wherewithal to be able to accomplish what I need to accomplish. So I get goosebumps just thinking about the level of empowerment that we're able to create with this program at every level of the organization. And whether you're an instructional designer, a trainer, a head of learning, someone that's doing data for the learning environment, in place of, you can be a learning strategist, you can effectuate that change, and you can drive performance at any level of the organization anytime. That's what's so exciting about this program.
Well said. And now, Mike, I'm turning back to you, our fearless leader here. What advice, what thoughts do you have to leave before we wrap it up today?
I think there's just a really big opportunity in the world for all of us to get better, but especially learning professionals as we embark upon the future, which is always unknown and very challenging, right? I think being able to have the tool sets and the knowledge and the background and the desire to really help impact business outcomes is just really, really exciting. And I appreciate everybody listening today to this.
Thank you, Mike and Claude and Michael, Dave, Cliff, and everybody that's listening. If you have more information and would like to email, you can email us at success@brandonhall.com. You can visit our website at brandonhall.com, and we're excited to hear from you. We'd love to share more about our program, our approach. We have group rates, member rates. So, this is for everyone. And we are going to be introducing other certifications throughout the year. We're starting next with our diversity and inclusion practice, and we're going across all of our human capital management practices. And then also we have other certificates that we're working on for more specialized areas or more segmented areas across the different functions in human capital management. So again, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, or however you're tuning into us, but we appreciate your time, and we're looking forward to working with you and to certifying you as a strategic learning strategist or as a learning strategist professional.
Thank you.